Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Dear viewers, let me welcome you to another episode of Sirat al-Mustaqim, the straight path. In this episode, I want to talk a little more about extracurricular activities perhaps, but also something else that was happening to me while I was in Saudi first, and then a follow-up in the UK perhaps. I was asked by a friend of mine if I would do the English translation of the Quran when the TV started up on each day. And of course I was hesitant and I said no. But he insisted, and I said, but look, I don't know Arabic. How can I do this? You've got Arabic speakers or people who understand Arabic that can do this better than me. He said, no, Daud. He said, I've seen you doing dawah and I'd like you to do it. So I said, well, if there's no problem in the fact that I don't know Arabic, then okay, I'll do it. So he said, come along and do it. So I actually went to the recording studios and actually recorded some episodes which they gave me, and I just gave the explanation in English. It was only about 10 minutes or 8 to 10 minutes each time, just when the Channel 2 TV, the English channel, started up in Saudi Arabia. But there was interesting spin-offs for this. For instance, I got a phone call from Bahrain one day, and the fellow used to work for me in King Fahd University of Petroleum Minerals, and he said, Daud, he said, I never thought I'd be saying this to you. He said, but yesterday I watched you on TV giving this explanation from the Quran, and I've come back today especially to watch you, and I've switched on the TV and you're not on. Where are you? I said, it's not live. Oh, he said, I wondered if you were sick or something. So I said, no. He was a Westerner and he wasn't interested in religion. But it was nice that at least he phoned me up to see, and to say that. Anyway, that was on and off for something like 6 months. And a couple of interesting spin-offs from that. Once we were driving from Jeddah to Medina, Mecca to Medina, and the car in front of us had a puncture. And one of these blue security police patrol cars stopped and was carrying things across and trying to help them. And the guy came up and promptly took everything off of me, wouldn't let me do anything, and did it all. And when we finished, he picked it all back up and went back to my car with the jack, for instance, and wouldn't let me carry anything. So when he put it in the car, he turned around to me and he says, Channel 2 TV? And I thought, amazing, you don't know Arabic, yet you watch the channel. So I tried to talk to him, but it was impossible. So, we just sort of shook hands, embraced whatever, and left. And then in the Grand Mosque in Mecca, I was coming out with my wife, and two Arab ladies, completely covered in niqab, hijab and abaya, walked between us. And one of them said, Hada min Riyadh? And Hada is addressed to a male. Hadi would be addressed to a female. So she was addressing me. She said, are you from Riyadh? And it took me a little while to twig that she was actually talking to me, because I didn't expect it. And my wife answered before I could. No, she's from Riyadh. So, I thought, this is fantastic. These people are recognizing me, and, I don't know anything about anything, and I wouldn't expect many of them to be watching such a program in English. But when I used to go from where I was living on the campus to the mosque, I would meet with some of the people going for the prayer as well, and we'd be walking along, let's say for Asa, and they'd be saying, I've just been watching you on TV, Daud. You watch the English channel? So, it was, how shall I put it? In a way, it was good feedback. Because if people were watching it and they were talking about it, then they were happy with it, So in that sense, I was getting some feedback, which was nice to know. Because I was apprehensive, as I said, because I don't know Arabic. And there's always the possibility you're making a mistake. But fortunately, I had my wife to check it all for me, and she knew Arabic. So I used to write up basically what I was going to do, and then go through it when it came in front of the TV. Anyway, when I came back to the UK, I looked for where Tarawih is recited in the mosque during Ramadan, and I first started going to a mosque in Loughborough, but I wasn't happy with the recitation. It was too fast. I didn't get anything out of it. And then I found out that there's a Saudi group, Arab group, in Loughborough University Mosque, and they were doing it, and I went along there, and it was much slower and you could follow it, so you got something out of it, alhamdulillah. And they brought over someone from Saudi Arabia who would give like Ramadan advices. Maybe in the early stages he took a passage from the Quran and explained it, and then they said to me, why don't you explain it in English? And instead of him telling me what he wanted me to do, I gave my own explanation, so I never knew how it fitted with his. But no one ever said anything, so alhamdulillah, it was more or less the same, I think. They would have told me if there'd been any differences anyway, I'm sure of that. And then after a couple of years he didn't come, so they said to me, why don't you do Ramadan advices after Taraweeh? Well, I was a bit shy and a bit reluctant because it's not my field, I'm not a scholar, and I thought other people would do it better, but they said, no, Daud, there's no one else, you have to do it. So I did it, and I did that for maybe 4 years. And then my wife's health deteriorated to such an extent that I couldn't leave her alone over night time, and so I didn't go for Taraweeh, and I used to stay with her, and so I stopped doing it. And that in a way was sad, because I used to quite like that. I used to go back for Qiyam before Fajr, and then stop for Fajr as well, and also have the food before Fajr, before starting fast, and that was a little bit sociable too. So, but I missed that. So anyway, alhamdulillah. But now people are saying to me, are you coming back and you're going to do Ramadan advices for this Ramadan? And I said, don't count on it, because I may be going to Dubai. I got some relatives over there and they're inviting me out, so inshallah I'll go to Dubai instead. So I was saying that I probably won't be doing it this year, because I'm thinking of going to Dubai and spending time with some relatives. So alhamdulillah, we will see what comes out, but that's the way it is at the moment. But it used to be interesting, because I used to try to make points, and I used to say that you are making us think, because the whole idea, I think, is that when you give a short talk, you want 1 or 2 points which make someone think, and they walk away still thinking, so that you don't just leave them and they just walk away and forget about it just like that. And the trick is, how can you make people think? Well, it was a university environment. I remember one night in particular I said something, and then I turned around and said, that's your homework for tonight. But they didn't do it. The next night when I asked them what they'd done, they hadn't done it. So, but anyway, it's just a way of stimulating interest and trying to get people to think, because most of the time we don't question ourselves, we don't analyse ourselves, we don't see where we are in terms of practicing our religion, and we need to know this. And this is what Ramadan is. It's a period of self-examination, really, and we try to measure up, or we don't, as the case may be. But there's no harm in reminding people that we should be evaluating ourselves and seeing how well we are doing, and maybe doing a bit better for the future, inshallah. So that's the sort of thing that was going on, and I more or less came to the end of, if you like, my spell of Ramadan advices. But you never know. One year they turned around to me and they said, instead of doing hadiths and the like now, they said, why don't you talk about dawah? So I actually gave 10-minute shots on dawah, and they seemed to like that too. And I was happy with that, because that was my field, really. If I was to say I have a field in Islam, it really would be to talk about simple Islam, basic Islam, because I'm not a scholar and I haven't studied. But alhamdulillah. And I never mentioned how I got into talking. The first talk I ever gave, funnily enough, was we wanted to buy a new computer for about $1 million and a half dollars, and the vendor was going to give the presentation, and an hour beforehand they turned up in my office and they said, Daud, we've decided it don't look good if it comes from the vendor, we want you to make the presentation. I said, well, I haven't got any material. No, we put it all together for you, and you were there when we did most of it, so you know it all. So I actually took over the presentation there and then, and actually gave the presentation to the senior committee in the university, and actually it was approved. I didn't think there was any problem about it being approved, but it was a question of whether I could do the presentation or not. But at least I learned to give a presentation. And after that didn't look back really, alhamdulillah. So I got used to talking. And another thing which I hadn't mentioned was that I read something like 15 of the World Assembly of Muslim Youth pamphlets, like what is Islam, morals in Islam. I read about 15 of these pamphlets onto audio cassettes. They were recorded in the King Khalid Masjid in Riyadh, and thousands of copies were distributed free to the Americans when they came for the Gulf crisis. So that was another way of getting into dawah, because these was the background information that one needs to start with on certain topics. The references were there, you pick up the references, you understand the content, and from then on you can build on it when you talk on that topic. So this was a ready reference really, and an easy way of getting into talking. But I did do this for the Americans, alhamdulillah. So let me stop there for this part, and inshallah we'll meet again after a short break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, and we'll continue with the second part of this episode. But now I would like to summarize my life in King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals. I've given you snapshots basically along the way, but what I would like to do now is to actually put the thing into perspective and put it in a timeline so that you can see the sort of things that happened and when. And basically I went there in 1974 as the operations supervisor in the computer center, but within, and I had the key punching, data entry section and computer operations. There was necessity to build up a network, so I started to build up a network, and I was doing that on my own. Then I took one of the operators or hired someone, and we gradually built up a network department. And we actually got as far as dialing communication to the computer as well, but that was a few years down the line. The systems group, operating systems group, had put in a system which wasn't what the university wanted, and they'd done this for ease of convenience, unfortunately, and in the vote my weight didn't count for anything, and neither did the administrative manager's weight. The basis being that the only person who could support it was the technical support guy, and he was vetoing everything except what he wanted. And we got that, and then when he left I took over systems as well, and now the idea was to change back to mainstream, what we really needed. But I sent one of the systems programmers to the States to this particular software that we had, and when he came back he said, Daud, he said, no one's doing anything like we are. I said, I know. He said, they're all using no more than 5 users on the system, whereas we had 5 regions, each with about 20 users for the students to use. And we were trying to do accounting on top of that. I said, no one's up to that stage. He says, not what it's for. He said, I know. Anyway, it took us 3 years to change that back to mainstream. So, but once we did that, we could move forward. Once we changed it back to mainstream, the academic support manager left. And the guys working for me came to me and said, Daud, you've got to take it over. I said, but if I take it over, you guys are going to lose out because I can't spend so much time with you. They said, but we'll have more free time because the problems won't be coming to us. I said, okay. So I went to the director and I said to him, you know that Barry is leaving. What are you doing about replacing him? He said, I don't know. I said, but you're the director. You have to do something. I said, I know. He said, but I don't know what to do. He said, tell me what to do. I said, but I can't tell you what to do. You're the director. I said, Daud, I'm telling you, tell me what to do. I said, give it to me. He said, you've got it. So that was it. So I went back to my group and I said, you're looking at the new academic manager, maybe acting, but at least the new academic manager. And they got up and embraced me, which was a surprise because most of these guys are only there for the money. They're not there for personal relationships or anything else to happen. But they knew that the structure wouldn't work unless there was some interfacing. And I knew that too. That's why it was done like this. So building up all these things and taking over more and more responsibilities. And in fact, I had about 80% of the computer centre under my responsibility. There were systems, application systems, the finance systems, registration systems being supported by one group, and there was external services by another group. But I was already involved, as I'd mentioned before, in consulting through this external services group. So that was the sort of thing that was going on, and that's how things continued. I was doing all the planning, strategic planning, and the requirements planning in terms of trying to keep everything going smoothly for the students to continue. In fact, I brought in a couple of systems which the students could use. One of the things I said was, what do the students do when they leave the university? And we didn't have anything on petrochemical processing or analysis, and I actually got a product which they could actually design. Petrol refinery, for instance, plus everything that goes with it, like flashpoints and so on and so forth for gas analysis. And I got that at a very cheap price, and they were happy with that. In fact, they were over the moon with it. And when the students left the university and got into Aramco, the oil company, at some stage they changed the one there to the one which they'd been using at the university. That lasted for 5 years and then got changed back again. But alhamdulillah, at least these things were working, and this was a sort of level of contribution that one could make. And I wanted to reduce the cost of student computing. So there was an academic system that had been brought out, and I got hold of this and I put it up. And that was now down to 20% of what the normal cost would have been. So the price had come down dramatically. And since it's the student facilities, the faculty facilities that were being built up, all of this meant that we were making more and more savings, because the more software we could put under academic support or educational support, the more discount we could get. And initially it was 80%, then it dropped to 40%, but at least it was a big saving compared to the normal cost of computing. And this was one of the problems with the bills, that they were always going up for computing and computing resources. But alhamdulillah, things were going pretty well. The library system was automated, and that was put on the mainframe. We could support that then. If it had been a standalone system, we couldn't have supported it. And then we got into, say, networking, and we were supporting that. And even one or two external agencies had links to us, so we were supporting those as well. So the system was building up all the way, and the number of students, I said, went up from 3,000 to 5,000. Okay. They brought in audio-visual, and they also brought in a digital exchange. And the future objectives were actually to merge all of these into one group, so that the cables are being laid for just one, not 3 times. But that was future objective after I left, alhamdulillah. So I think I'll end this session here, and this is the end of this episode. So Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, until we meet again, inshallah.